Okay, Thomas, are you recording?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I would like to call this Planning Commissioner meeting to order, August 18th, 2026 at 6:31 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Commissioner Huggins.
Here?
Commissioner DeVoynes.
Present.
Commissioner Bowman.
Present.
Commissioner Fatisi.
Present.
Commissioner Sexton. I guess, no, let's scratch that. Commissioner Jasper.
Present.
Commissioner Fournette, present. Okay, consent agenda. I wasn't here last month. Thank you to Commissioner Jasper for filling in. And if everyone had a chance to read the minutes, we can talk about that and approve them if they're good. Those of you that were here.
So I have a question. We're doing something a little bit different now because as I'm going through like the unfinished business, you're just adjusting the agenda because we're not getting into the actual discussion, what we did in the past. But that kind of makes sense, and I'll tell you why. Because everything is recorded, right? So people, if they want to actually take a look at what was actually discussed. So I kind of like this format because there's a backup that goes right to everything, where it could get very cumbersome to like reiterate every word that everybody said. So doing it this way and then having the ability to go to the recording, I'm just wondering, would it be advisable to, on the minutes, to put the link to the actual meeting site? Right, because that cuts out any discussion on anything. Hey, for further investigation or whatever language we want to put in there, that there is a resource that actually goes to what that actual discussion was, because it can be very cumbersome. I mean, I've done these meetings before, especially meeting minutes, but since it's already recorded, that's basically, the bottom line.
So when I publish these minutes, it all goes to the same location on that portal, the same portal that I send you the meeting materials to. When it gets published, it goes and gets uploaded to the same location. So I would say no, just because they'd already be there and be able to see minutes published for the meeting.
But would you want to put the link to the actual meeting?
The same location that the minutes are in, like right above it is the video.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so you'd
okay.
already-
So
you just
you
see it
answered the
there.
question, so it's there, okay. Thank you.
Any other comments of those of you that were there last month? Would anyone like?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from July 21st, 2026 as written.
We have a first from Commissioner Jasper. Do we have
I
a
second.
Commissioner Fatisi, second. All those in favor of approving the minutes as written, say aye.
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 All opposed? They're approved as written. Thank you, Nicole. Okay, next up. General public comments. Please keep comments to 3 minutes or less because state law prohibits the use of city facilities for the purpose of supporting or opposing a campaign or ballot proposition. We respectfully request that public comment not make reference to such matters. Written comments will be accepted by letter or via email at nmmcgowan@sedro-woolley.gov. Attention, public comment until 4:30 p.m. the day before the meeting. Do we have anyone in the online or anything written?
Staff did not receive any written comments.
I have to shut my fan off now. I'm sorry, what?
Staff did not receive any written
Okay,
comments.
thank you. That was probably irritating, I'm sorry. And I don't see anybody online. I don't see that bar that's usually there. Maybe no one's, oh,
I do not see anyone online attempting to make a public comment.
okay. So since there is no general public comment, we'll close that at 6:36 PM. Public hearing, there is none. Unfinished business, updates to Title II, 13, 15, 16, and 17 Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code, repeal and replace consolidated planning procedures, third read.
Okay. So for review and discussion tonight is draft 3 of the proposed proposal to repeal and replace Chapter 290, Consolidated Planning Procedures. At the July meeting, the Planning Commission provided feedback on the second draft, and the bulk of those comments revolved around the definitions in Section 1704 and the permit review process in Section 1515. So with respect to the definitions, staff have proposed several changes in an attempt to simplify some definitions and remove some obsolete definitions. There were many lengthy ones that functioned more as checklists for applications rather than providing clarity for terms used in the code. So I'll note that there is still some research needed on some of those definitions. I've left staff comments in the margins noting where those additional discussion points and research is needed. Namely, vesting comes up as a topic for needing more additional research. As far as the permit review process goes, staff reviewed subsection 15.014D. This was the general process for applications and decisions, and felt that this was largely unnecessary given the proposed tables that we included that already indicate the general permitting processes for specific permit types. And that specific information that was included in the subsection, like public noticing requirements, content, and timing for reports, public hearing procedures, permit decisions, all of that felt more fitting for our administrative provision section. So the contents of that 15.014D have been moved to new sections in Chapter 1704, Administrative Provisions, and we've provided those appropriate code references. The language hasn't changed other than adding in purpose and applicability statements. You'll see that staff have also proposed a process for deferred submittals, and that has been kind of married into the process for submitting waiver requests. So we did not elect to provide a list of deferrals or waivers that we may allow because that changes on a case-by-case basis for each project, depending on the scope and scale. So if an applicant would like to request a waiver for a submittal or a deferral for a submittal, they can ask for that at or after a pre-application meeting, and the appropriate staff member for which the request is being made would then respond to that in writing. Here's your list of approved deferred submittals, waived submittals, with a note there that because the pre-app is intended to be reviewing a conceptual project, not a fully designed project, that list is subject to re-review and change if the application materials show there's been substantial changes.
Here's a comment I was just trained differently as I went through all of this code, and I looked at 187 pages. I think we can strip this down by 50 pages because if you look at that specific item that you were just looking at on the waiver and deferrals, it's too wordy. I mean, when I started looking at it, and here's just an example, you have to condense down to the specificity of the requirements. When I'm reading it, it's like we're having a conversation. But when you're writing code, we don't have to mention staff. We know it's staff. I'm just saying there's little things in here as you go through it. You can consolidate this right down to the requirement end of it, and it would be a ton of work to go through here, and I'm not suggesting that at this particular time, but just what you were just talking about, and that's what I made the note on. Submittal waiver and deferral process. You don't have to say in order to have, and normally, I get it. Just go straight to what they need, right? Because you can take that like 10 lines right there, and I bet you can knock them down to 3. And when people like you are reading this kind of stuff, it gets cumbersome sometimes because you're reading it, and it's a long time to get to where you really need to be instead of just going to it. And the only reason I'm saying it, like when I do real estate contracts, I was told to go right to the point. Don't be too wordy on things. Go right to the requirement. The word shall is always a power word, not like must. Well, you must do this. Well, no, the requirements of this, you shall submit this, that's all. But just even looking at that one example that you're doing there, you could probably knock that down to 2 or 3 sentences. But anyway, continue on. But that was just an observation, and it's just a training difference that I would write this very differently, just simply for the fact that we're not having a conversation. Like, we know it's staff. We know who the authority is. And I'm just saying that we can cut down a lot of the bulk here into what the requirements actually are for whatever section, you know, even on something like this, on a deferral process. Just go right to what it is. That's just, like I said, it's just a difference in style, I guess. But this is code. This is like the law. It's ordinances. And that's how you have to kind of think of it like you're writing an ordinance, because that's kind of what we're doing here.
Yeah, okay. We can come back to that for additional discussion, but I'd like to finish up
Go ahead.
with the changes here. So, let's see. Actually, that pretty much covers the changes. Other than that, it's really just correcting staff oversights that we didn't catch in the last iteration of the draft. I do want to briefly make a statement, though. So any comments on these draft amendments, I'd like them to be limited to the scope and purpose of the change, which is simplifying the code for permitting procedures and administrative provisions. Anything that's going to be kind of encroaching into zoning and development code updates, or other than that, we're starting to get a little more out of scope, complicating things. It may affect references to other codes. I would like to limit that just to the scope here. If there are things that are maybe out of scope, but it's really just a minor, quick corrective change, I'm fine with that. But any discussion that's outside of the scope here, we can note that for a future discussion under a different amendment, but
So anything not in yellow, we'll table for later.
yes. Yeah, just try to keep it to the purview of permitting procedures and administrative provisions. But, yeah, that's about it. And with that, I will open up for discussion and comments.
Well, I can start. I just have 2 brief comments. One, I do like the rewording on the ADUs. It's on page 50, but we don't need to refer to it. And then also really like how you changed the wording for the commercial windows. It's on page 129. Thank you to Commissioner Bowman for your input on, doesn't need to be commercial grade necessarily, just commercial appearance. So really like those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
To add to what Joe had mentioned, some of this in the submittal waiver and deferral process, I feel like the disclaimer portion of the staff having the ability to change, like revise this list at any time, that could be provided on the written list that the city gives the applicant as like a, hey, just so you know, like as of right now, this is what we're seeing. But we have the ability to change it at any time, just to condense it a little bit.
Yeah, there's a similar note that I put in all of my comment letters for pre-apps. I'm sure you've seen it before, but it's because we've reviewed just a conceptual project. This does not constitute a full review of your project plans, and these comments are subject to change, so it could easily be added to that statement. Mm-hmm.
Hey, here's a question for your timing. I'm looking at we can do X, Y, Z in X amount of calendar days. Are you giving yourself enough of time to get a lot of this stuff done?
Doesn't matter. That's what the
Well,
state tells us
well,
to do.
But you do have a little bit of latitude. Instead of 14 days, it might be 15 days. I'm just saying what's realistic from your perspective, because when I saw some of that stuff, like depending on what kind of contracts I write, there's business days, there's calendar days. Depending on how long something is, it kicks in to another calculation. So you don't want to you want to be thorough, right? You want to get the right response done. But are you cutting yourself enough of time that it might take an extra day or two where you're not rushing through something? Because we can have some really complicated permits or whatever. I mean, stack of pages like this. I mean, this is 187 pages here. You could be looking at 300 pages, engineering docs, and all kinds of other stuff. So do you feel that you've cut yourself and your staff enough of time to do these types of reviews? Because it might need to go to somebody else in building versus planning, where everybody else has different schedules of different things going on. I just want to make sure that you feel that there's ample time here to get done what right here you're committing to, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, staff are pretty limited as far as how much flexibility we can have with
Really?
review timelines. It all comes down from the state amendments, yeah. So there is some flexibility with larger scale projects, I would say, and there are some exemptions, right? So for things like annexations or rezones or planned residential developments, things that might take a longer period of time to review because they are more complex. Certain things like that are exempted, and then we can apply our own review timelines. And we've felt that the review timelines that we've placed for those are good enough for us to be able to do it within reason, right?
So this is mandated from a higher power.
Yes.
Okay.
So when I was putting together those tables, I was heavily relying on the Local Project Review Act. For everything that we could, we chose the maximum review timeline. And if we do exceed those, we do have to return to the applicant a portion of their permit review fees. It scales depending on how over time you are. And so we're trying to meet that balance to make sure we're meeting Commerce's deadlines, but we're also giving us the maximum time possible.
We learn something new every day.
Time is of the essence.
I went through the design standard guidelines and made comments. Do you want me to go through every comment or question, or just send them to you?
Did you say you put comments down on the design standards and guidelines?
Yeah.
Let's save that for later. Right now, we're going through the Chapter 290 Consolidated Planning Procedures Update.
Yes.
That'll be the new business item, and Joe will cue us in on when we're ready to discuss those.
Any other comments? I believe people are looking, reading, thinking. Look, we'll read for a few more minutes here, and Madison is studying it heavily.
I just have to go through and see if I can find any of my markups.
Okay. Well, while you're looking for those, I could bring up a topic of discussion. So we did coordinate review with some other departments, namely the building and engineering departments. While we were going through the definitions, some of those touched on content that are more in their purview. Investing of codes came up, so we found a lot of definitions that referenced, for example, mechanical plans need to be in compliance with the current iteration of the International Building Code, for example. What we've proposed in here is, how do I explain this? So for projects, this kind of may be an issue. If you recall back to the last iteration of the draft, we included a new definition for what we mean by a project, right? So it's a larger scale development that requires multiple permits to get from start to finish, right? So think of a subdivision. You got your preliminary subdivision application, then you've got your civil plans, and you got your final plat application, then you get your building permits, right? That's a project for one neighborhood development. So when we're talking about mechanical plans need to be vested under the current building code, but we've stated in here that projects are vested at the time your preliminary subdivision application is complete. Are you then vested under what was the building code then? Or are you vested under the building code that is in place when you submit your building permit? So.
I think it should be the building code when you submit your building permit if you think about, at the time you're submitting preliminary plat, you don't even know what house plan you'll be submitting for building permit. It probably isn't even designed yet. So also, preliminary plat to final plat to actually building a house can be a long time,
It can be.
multiple years, so.
Yeah, preliminary plats for long subdivisions, you're required to do your improvements within 5 years. Improvements being civil improvements to get your final plat. Then once final plat is in place, normally people apply for their building permits right away, because now you've got your legal lots of record. But that's not always the case. You could sit on those for a really long time, right? So who knows when those building permits would come in. The other issue too is building code is often updated for public safety, security reasons. So, it does make sense as far as building homes that people will be living in to be up to current codes. So that's something we'll need to look into a little bit more. But that issue may not need to be addressed here. And the reason I say that is that the definitions that I was finding those references come up in are for plan sets. So I looked for the mechanical plans example. Mechanical plans does not come up anywhere else in the code, in the municipal code. What a definition is intended to do when it's included in a code section like this is to provide clarity on a term used elsewhere in the code. What whoever wrote this in the past did was kind of included them as here's what we mean by mechanical plans, and here's the checklist for everything that you need to show on them, here's who needs to stamp it, et cetera, et cetera. But all of that stuff is stipulated by the code that's in. And it changes project to project, right? Like we were discussing last time, mechanical plans can be designed by many different people, and that goes for any kind of plan as well. So it really just depends on the scale and the scope of the project. So what I would like to do is go through and delete the definitions that really don't come up anywhere else in the code. The referenced code that we have adopted, whether that be the building code or some other adopted standard, Public Works Department standards for engineering plans, that sort of thing, those will all stipulate what we need to see in the plans that are submitted, as far as who stamps them, the details shown, that sort of thing. Yeah, and this all can be included in checklists on applications as well. For pre-apps, the staff that would be, if it's of question, who needs to stamp these plans, what details do you need shown, the staff can answer that in a comment letter on the pre-app. If somebody doesn't go through a pre-app with us and they've submitted plans that don't show everything, we address those in a comment letter. I don't think it needs to be in the code.
You know, the definition section is critical in any code I look at. I mean, that just sets the table as to what I'm looking at and what it actually means. So having that correct and accurate, and it could change over time, right? I mean, for instance, drawings, you know, in the past it was like printed style, where now it could be submitted in a different format, just as an example. But definitions are critical in any code, regardless of the jurisdiction. That drives what you're looking at. Yeah. That was a good find, by the way. You must have been looking through a lot of stuff.
I agree with that. I think as an applicant, I would prefer to see the list of requirements on the application itself. Because as an applicant, if you're familiar with the code, you're not necessarily going to read through the code just as you're filling out the application. You're only going to read through the code if you aren't sure on something and you need reference to it. When you're filling out the application, you're just going to say, oh, I have this, I have this, I have this. Like, it's a cleaner version. And then it gives you guys the ability to update it as time changes, right? Without having to go through this process. Yeah.
Any other points you wanted to talk about before we move on?
That was the main one, was definitions need more work. My thought process for moving forward to the next iteration, but I do know that Madison was looking for some stuff, so I'll give you enough. Yeah.
It was all in the design, the next portion.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's it from me then.
Okay. If no one has anything else to comment on, then we'll move on. It's 6:58. We're done with unfinished business. Moving on to new business. Updates to Title 15 and 17 Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code and the Design Standards and Guidelines First Read.
Hello, thank you. So, just want to preface, I have been working on this longer than the comp plan update. This was my first assignment at the city. And so I'm very happy to see that we're finally at the Planning Commission stage here. And so one of my first projects at the city was to take inventory and put together an analysis of the current existing murals that we have in town, as well as any changes to the code that would, bring about more murals or any, glaring red flags in our code. And in my research, I noticed that the mural code hadn't been updated since it was 1989, I believe. And the rules and requirements for murals and government regulations of them has changed a lot since 1989. A lot of Supreme Court decisions have come out that limit the ability of governments to restrict content on murals as well as signs. And so we've kind of paired this mural update with the sign code update. Our sign code is also a bit outdated, not as bad as the mural code, and it's a little unclear in some parts of the sign code, and it's very subjective. And so we're really trying to create objective standards that don't infringe on the content of murals or signs. And so a code update was brought to the Planning and Business Development Committee in 2025, and that ended up getting tabled for more feedback as well as to finish the comp plan update. So my efforts were spent on the comp plan, and I had to put this to the side for about 6 months. And so we're bringing it back mostly because there was an update to the Washington state legislation in the GMA. In 2023, the legislature included design review standards and the limitations of governments for those into the GMA. So because we are a GMA planning city, there are certain local or certain design review standards that we have to uphold. One of those is we have to have objectivity in our standards. Nothing can be subjective. The other main point is that we can't limit bulk restrictions through our design standards. So no height reductions, depending on what you're building, has to be the same in the zone. No step back reductions, or setback reductions has to be the same than what is permitted in the underlying zone, things of that nature. Also, in the meantime, in 2025, we had some complaints for downtown businesses with their paint color, as well as the integrity of the paint and this just its overall condition once it was finished. And so we've also included an exterior paint code that is only applicable to the central business district. And we have included objective requirements for businesses who are wishing to paint in the central business district, as well as more subjective recommendations from the city, should a business owner or property owner be looking at this and want to, go above and beyond with the city's requirements. We've also taken out the requirement to get a permit from us to paint your building. As currently a requirement if you own property downtown, any exterior changes, regardless of how small it is, you need to get a permit from us if you're in the downtown. So we're taking out that requirement, and I'll speak to that a little bit later on how we're going to set that threshold for design review. But this finished product that you guys have now is really, there's 4 parts, and that's why the chapter is split into 4 different articles. The first part is going to be the design review standards. We've moved that to the zoning code because previously it was in the building code, and our building inspector does not complete design review. It is the planning division that does that. We've also moved signs and mural standards to this new chapter, the aesthetics. And then we have also included a new voluntary mural building facade easement program. So it's a bit complicated. I will get to that in a little bit, but I want to go through the municipal code here and order the updates to that. And so before I take on any questions, I want to get into the design standards and guidelines. And so there are 3 main, 3 primary major changes to the design standards. The first one is we are increasing the threshold for design review. Currently, it is any exterior change in the downtown, or it is whether you trigger environmental review under SEPA in any other zone. We have decided to change that to all new construction and demolition in the instance where somebody demos a building and puts a parking lot there instead, as well as any remodel or alteration or change to an existing building that exceeds 25% of its assessed value. So if you have a building that's assessed at $1 million from the assessor, the valuation of those improvements needs to be $250,000 or more to trigger design review. On a much smaller scale, it is intended to allow business owners, smaller businesses in the downtown to paint, to make improvements to their building, change out their door, without triggering that threshold for design review, but also making sure if anybody's, doing a full remodel inside their building, that they're also making sure the exterior looks good as well.
So we're talking about the CBD only.
No, so that threshold is going to be for everywhere. We're
Okay.
changing it from the zone, and it's just going to be 25% everywhere or new construction.
So you go to the current assessed value off of the assessor,
Yes.
which can be up and down. I mean, I've seen actually values go down from 2025 to 2026. I'm just saying that's a lot of work on your side because it's a moving target.
Yes, it's a moving target, and it definitely changes and can go up and down depending on the year. I don't think calculating that number is very burdensome for us because Skagit Assessor has all of their data readily available for us, and we use it every day.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Another major change is making sure our design standards are objective, taking away the subjectivity or moving those subjective requirements, recommendations to the encourage section of our design standards. We have also attempted to consolidate the design standards. The previous version was more than 75 pages. The current version is around 50 pages. It is hard to shrink that document. And I also want to point out, when we were going over the comp plan, the Planning Commission was pretty adamant that they don't want to see any changes to the UVMU standards, because that zoning designation is so recent. It's not completely built out yet. So there have been no proposed changes to the urban village mixed-use overlay zone section in the design standards, except for formatting to match the formatting of this new version. So before I go on to signs, murals, and the facade easement program, let's talk about design standards.
I was just wondering when we're getting Target.
I don't think we're going to get a Target anytime soon,
I
since
saw a
there's one in
picture.
Burlington.
Commissioner DeVoynes, is this where you had a question?
I just see a comment in the document. Do you want me to read them all or just send you the document? I don't want, in the interest of time, I don't know if I'll go through all my comments or not. I don't know.
I'd like to hear your comments, especially the big ones, any major comments.
Okay, can I go through them and figure out what the people are?
Is this good time?
Yeah, now's a good time.
One was there before. I need to find them all. I apologize. If anyone can come back to me.
Okay, we can find out if anyone else has any other comments or questions first.
While you guys are thinking of questions, I'm going to go through the document and point out any major changes from the previous version of the design standards. We have introduced a requirement for EV charging in our larger parking lots. Parking lots 25 with 25 stalls or more are going to be required to either match the building code or provide a parking stalls at a 10%, whichever one is the stricter requirement. The building code is changing, and the building code is also regulating that now.
You know, they've already started doing that. I want to say the Masons Hall put 4 EV charging stations in.
That's a city parking lot. That was a city
Is
project.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. I noticed it.
Another change that is pretty significant from the previous one is there was a lot of different terminology with common space, open space, public open space. So we've tried to clear that up and use the term that's pretty common on the West Coast, privately owned public open space. Abbreviation is POPOS, POPOS. Fun term. And there is that requirement, which can be supplemented with the amenities in our residential recreation area code. Then there's our just landscaping and our screening requirement, as well as our open space requirement that we have in our zoning code. And then finally, there's also private yard space requirements. There were even more terminologies used in the previous version, and so any feedback to consolidating those terminologies anymore would be appreciated. And I also want to thank Western Washington because the bulk of these changes were recommended from the students there.
You find it?
I'm sorry now. For the comments, I couldn't find it before the right button. I apologize. Okay, so page 134. The city will be responsible for removal of graffiti Do we know how much that would cost? Have we ever had to remove graffiti from a mural before?
So that is something we're working with our Public Works Operations Supervisor on. I've gotten some feedback from him, which I was not able to implement into this code in time. But there is a specific material that the city uses that they overlay on top of a finished mural. And then if somebody comes and graffitis over that, they can just power wash it and it will preserve the mural, that material. So if the city were to take over maintenance of murals, that would be a requirement that we could ask for.
Thank you. Page 140, the required trees in the parking lot. It seemed to me odd to me that you would have to have a tree required in a parking lot. Page 140.
Yeah, that's fair. We do, as of right now, require trees in larger parking lots through our design standards. Part of the intent behind that is to reduce the appearance, the overbearing nature of asphalt. There's also benefits with cooling. Asphalt generates a lot of heat from the sun, and the trees can mitigate that. And so the intent behind those different ratios is if you're going to have the parking lot by the street, there's a lot of asphalt going on there. With the building farther away, it makes it less inviting. So if the building's going to be farther away, we want more trees to make it more inviting, to invite, a cooler space there.
Right, okay. Thank you. Next one. Page 150. Garage doors are prohibited when adjacent to fallen streets, unless pedestrian scale decorative have been applied. I just found that a bit intrusive myself.
Yeah, so this has been changed since the previous version. The previous version, we didn't allow garage doors within the central business district core. So Metcalf, Woodworth, Murdoch, those streets really in the core of downtown, unless they provided decorative treatment. And a lot of property owners, including the city, chose to put a mural over those doors with a vinyl sticker to achieve that decorative treatment. And so the reason why that previous requirement was in place was our downtown is intended for pedestrian traffic. Our complete streets policy has prioritized pedestrian traffic, especially in the downtown. And so a mural is intended, or any sort of pedestrian decorative treatment is intended to still allow property owners to have a garage door if they so choose, but so that it's mitigating that effect and still allowing pedestrians to, feel safe, feel comfortable downtown. We've reduced those requirements to just these blocks here. When you walk down these sections of downtown, there's a lot of small businesses with storefronts. Not a lot of them have room for a garage door. The ones that do are probably would want to utilize that space with large storefront windows or some sort of inviting entryway. So we were confident that this was a good balance between allowing people to still have a garage door if they so choose, but if they are, right in the center of our downtown, they're at least doing something to make it, to upgrade it a little bit.
Thank you.
Hey, this is just it's the obvious kind of thing. We spent a lot of time on the kind of trees that need to be planted in public spaces for a whole lot of reasons. We don't have a list, we just say trees. Wouldn't it be advisable to say, per the standards and whatever, as to what you can plant there? This just says trees.
Yeah,
We don't want
we can
just-
reference the street tree code.
Yeah,
That'd be helpful, yeah.
Because we need to be specific on something like that, right? Because somebody just says, these are the trees I want. But no, there's certain trees that we don't want. Not all trees are the same. And we did beat that to death, too.
I have a question about the trees, not the design standards though. Has the city have a shade analysis completed ever?
We have not. Department of Fish and Wildlife recommended that we undertake a tree canopy study. Their recommended scope and their example of a tree canopy study would have required us to at least find a third party to conduct that study because we simply do not have the capacity of staff right now.
That's understandable. I've been thinking about it because it's hot out lately. As I'm walking around, I'm like, oh, we could use some more trees.
There's a longer story to that, because I want to say 3 years ago, they were going to come in and do that for the city, okay, without having to pay for it. And then all of a sudden, that kind of went away, because that's a pretty expensive undertaking. So they first said, hey, we're going to come in and do this, I want to say about 3 years ago, and then all of a sudden, we never heard from them again, so.
The last time that we did, we're talking about the trees in the plan like this. They just said that the city engineer has the list of the trees that are allowed, and he reviews them when he reviews the right of way. So, but I like your idea that of trees that shouldn't be here. There are also some plants that shouldn't be here that should also be on that list that are pretty invasive. Ivy is one of them, English ivy, and there should be a list of plants that aren't allowed, as well as plants that are good ones for the street right-of-ways.
So you have an update on what the state's going to do for us as far as our trees?
Fish and Wildlife has been in communication with us on our critical area ordinance updates, of course. Yeah, the main reason for their recommendation to do a tree canopy study is for us to be able to track how well critical area ordinance updates are impacting retention, protection, et cetera, of buffers to critical areas.
The consultant went over that with us, and it was very, very extensive. So when I looked at the language of what they were recommending and what they originally said they were going to do for us that they did not do, then the language, hey, do this. Well, somebody have $1 million check? Because I got to tell you, that what they were recommending is not cheap by any way, by any stretch of anything. So you can make these recommendations, that's great, but who's going to pay for it?
So I know that obviously we are not the size of the city of Bellingham, but my brother lives there, and he was talking about how they did a shade analysis, and then they offered free trees for homeowners to plant, right, to increase the shade. And I'm wondering if that was some sort of grant program, or I don't know. I just thought that was a really neat idea, especially in pedestrian areas. I've been kind of making note of places that are really hot to walk in the evening or go on bike rides and things like that.
I love the idea of incentivizing homeowners to do it themselves, plant trees. It is a lot to place on developers when you keep increasing landscaping requirements for their projects and whatnot, and hoping that their projects on their own will increase the shade and whatnot. If there's going to be, certain targets that we're going to try to hit as a city, it's best to get everybody involved.
Their soil conservation as a yearly sale, and I can't remember which month it's in now because it's been 10 years since I did it, but you can you get a catalog from them, and now it's probably online, and it tells you all of the native trees that they're selling that year. And so I spent $25 and got some mountain ash and some other stuff that I liked for shade, just for a property that I have. And they're tiny, so it's going to take them a few years to get up there, but they didn't cost hardly anything to do it. I mean, I just did it as a homeowner because I wanted the trees and the shade. So And I know they still do that, I just don't know when it is, but you can find them online.
What did you say the company name was?
It's not a company, it's Skagit Soil Conservancy or Soil Conservation.
I'm gonna check them out. Thank you.
They're the ones that do like the Samish River plan and all of that. They're working on all that stuff. Yeah. And they're aimed at farmers, I think, but they didn't mind that a homeowner came out to their sale and picked up $25 worth of trees, so.
Commissioner DeVoynes, did you still have any more questions?
Yes, I still have items. Page, sorry, page, I'm sorry, it cut off. Page 163.
153?
It said you need to have 4 of the items on the list of 4 of the items. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. It got cut off. Chapter 6. Item 1, the required standards. You need 4 of the 10 items. I was surprised it did 4 of them. I would recommend 3 or less myself. A sports course, sports field, covered fitness shelter, site furniture, public art. It just seemed a lot demanding. I mean, it seemed, I don't know. My opinion is 4 is a bit excessive, but just my personal opinion.
Yeah. So item or requirement 6.1, chapter 6, requirement 1. 4 of those required elements may be too excessive. I want to know what the other members of the planning commission think, if 3 or 2 would be a better requirement.
So when we built that years ago, the point of that was that it's a minimum standard. They're getting trade-offs, at the time they were getting trade-offs at least for, so this was in trade-off for square footage and stuff. And so we set minimums of what they had to do in the public spaces to make up for the fact that they were getting less public spaces and more units. So I think that's why that's there. So you're just reducing the load for the developer, but you're undercutting the trade-off part of the part of it. So.
Okay. I do, yeah.
I have no idea what page they're on.
163, sorry, I thought I heard 153. It's 163.
That's
Yeah, 163 of the packet, page 29 of the design standards and guidelines.
At least 4 different elements from the following list shall be incorporated into the creation area.
I would recommend 3 myself.
I think 3 is reasonable from my point of view.
I think 3 is reasonable as well, and I do appreciate the any other element that meets the intent, because that allows the ability to collaborate, depending on like what kind of open space you want to provide, and also if you're thinking about maybe a active, trying to think of the correct verbiage, or an aging in place community, right? Like having the option for another element is useful because there might not be much intent behind the children's play equipment, stuff like that.
Another point of discussion on that, the city's been getting requests more often to have recreation area in subdivisions dedicated to the city, and the city take over maintenance for those sorts of things. Typically, what the city expects to happen is when a residential subdivision comes in, that the HOA or the common ownership, right, maintains those open space areas. But it does happen where HOAs dissipate, property owners have arguments over who's responsible for what. If somebody didn't do a great job writing up the covenants or enforcing the covenants of the HOA, that gets messy real quick. So this is something that has come up more often in recent years, is requests for the city to take over those open spaces, which puts more of a maintenance burden on city staff. So maybe it's a matter of making it clear that this is something that the owners of the subdivision need to handle, because the city can't take on every single residential recreation area in the city. That doesn't make sense. But when you start requiring more and more elements as far as amenities for those spaces, it does get hard to maintain.
No, back to what you just said, that's on the HOA. Okay, and there's a reason why we do certain requirements when we do certain developments, because that's exactly where we want the responsibility. So them throwing their problems at the city, when it's their responsibility per their covenants, conditions, and restrictions, and about 4 other documents, that's really on them. So the individual property owners, that's their responsibility to deal with their HOA, to decide who they want to elect to their HOA, to their board, and that's what their responsibility is. So I hear what you're saying, but if I'm the city of Sedro-Woolley, I'm saying, that's your biz, not mine. And you see it all, I see it all the time. Yeah, I see great
Which is a lot.
HOAs.
How we respond.
Yeah, all I'm saying is I see it all the time. And good HOAs, they add value to the different residences that are in that overall association. And in a lot of respects, it's more than just even play equipment. You're talking water systems and a whole bunch of other different things that could be really expensive, and they need to be maintained.
I have a question. Do these required standards, do they go forever, or do they fizzle out after 5 or 10 or 20 years?
Could you elaborate a little more?
Well, like, for instance, open spaces, these things here. Okay, so you have to do these to get the permit to do what you're trying to do. And then who checks up to see if it's still there in 5 years? I mean, like, what if the playground disappears, or the sports court disappear, or the picnic tables disappear? What happens?
There is not a clear procedure for that. The law, some sections of the code and some of the HOA's conditions, or CCNRs, require that HOAs check in with the city on January 15th. In my time here, I have never seen one, but they could be going to another staff member. The design standards that our division would require and then likely enforce, we do not receive check-ins from HOAs for anything like that.
Okay, and back to what you were saying, Nicole, does the city want to take over these little parks, or do they not want? I couldn't understand exactly what you're saying.
From conversations with the Public Works Parks Maintenance guy, Nathan, it's really not in the city's best interest to take over little piecemeal parks. They're a nightmare to maintain and try, as we keep adding on, it just means they're stretched more thin. Things get missed, expenditures increase, that sort of thing. The preference would be to focus on larger parks that are more evenly spaced throughout the city, where you can have all these really nice amenities within decent walking distance. Focus on things like Olmsted Park, Riverfront Park, those bigger ones, the shared spaces. Private residential recreation areas are really just intended to be serving the neighborhood that they're in.
It's more than that, too. It's a liability thing. If all of a sudden you're responsible for private property, and let's say, a slide or something wasn't repaired correctly, whatever, I don't think the city should absorb any of that risk. And that's what the HOA is for. That's what their insurance is for. That's totally on them. And that's not a fine line, not at all. So I can easily see why that response came back from our parks and recreation. And it's just realistic. So anyway, and that is a requirement on the HOA. And you see all different types of HOAs. I've seen HOAs that you have a bunch of different retired people. You have an HOA that the president doesn't even want to be the president. So you have all these different dynamics going on the private side of the fence. It's where it needs to belong. Stay in your lane, right?
I agree with you and Nicole about that. And also, why would you want to create a city government agency that you have to keep up and running and hire those people at those expenses to do your neighborhood thing, which they don't know anything about your neighborhood. You know what you need in your neighborhood. You've got a lot of little kids, so you need some play equipment, right? Or it's all older people, and all they need is a picnic table and a shade thing, so they can get outside and sit. So anyway, I think it's fueled by people who are trying to look for a way to make it cheaper to live in their homes, and I understand that, but it's throwing the burden on the city and the taxpayers in general to get out from under that, and it's much cheaper for everybody if you just pay your due and fix the thing, and then you're done with it. You didn't have to pay a department or anything like that. That's just my take on it, but I agree that it should just stay in the HOA realm and or live in a neighborhood where you don't have an HOA, and then.
Yeah, if you choose a neighborhood with HOAs, I guess you're going to live with it, right? Yeah.
Based on your comment, Nicole, about the focus on kind of larger community parks and providing amenities there, is it the city's preference that developers choose the fee in lieu option for like open space requirements for subdivisions?
That's a good question.
I thought so too.
Yeah, so there, to clarify on that, so there is a provision in the Residential Recreation Areas Code that allows subdivisions of 15 lots or less to pay a fee in lieu in the amount of $15,000 to the Parks Reserve Fund instead of providing residential recreation area in their subdivision. And so I think the purpose behind that is that the 15 lots really isn't a significant increase in the grand scheme of things as far as residential development goes. And that funding could be used for making, kind of adding to the pool of resources for community parks that would be better serving the full community rather than having these little piecemeal tiny little parks that have like maybe a slide in them. So yes, I think in those cases where you have those smaller developments, it might be more beneficial to do the fee in lieu. Yeah. Lately, our subdivisions have been more than 15 lots, though.
And I was gonna say, we haven't done this since 2004, and it would be nice to do it again. But we did a park survey back then, and interestingly enough, everybody loves the big parks like Riverfront and Bingham and what am I forgetting now? There's the new one, Olmsted up there, yeah, the new ones that they're building. But everybody likes those, but what everybody was asking for in the plan were neighborhood and pocket parks, that's what they were asking for in 2004. Was that they wanted someplace that they could push the stroller to around the corner, not have to get in their car and drive to Riverfront Park, or spend the whole day walking down there, or whatever the situation, or take the bus. Anyway, so it'd be interesting to see if that's changed over time, but that was the consensus of the people that responded back then was yeah, we love all the big parks, but we'd really like to see neighborhood and pocket parks, so there's someplace where when we're pushing the stroller or walking with the kids to stop and do something.
There's definitely a balance that you want to set in your community where you have that walkability in your community to be able to hit those pocket parks and be able to walk to the places, especially for an island like we are, trying to reduce the amount of trips in your vehicle. It's important for us, especially.
So back to Commissioner DeVoyne's question, which brought up a good discussion. What do we do about at least 3 or 4? What do we do with that number? Is that what your question was? Why 4?
Yeah.
My recommendation would be see who's in favor of 3 and just vote of hands.
Could we say right now who's in favor of changing the standards from at least 4 different elements to 3? All in favor, I guess?
I'm not.
You're not in favor,
No,
okay.
No,
Then
I
we're
think
not
having all
unanimous.
these amenities that just kind of all combined together, have a water fountain, equipment. As a matter of fact, I can see this list increasing to other elements to expand it that are just as much an amenity to something. Why dumb it down? This is good stuff.
Well,
If anything, that list should increase.
I think Jay is insinuating that the list could be infinitum.
Yeah, okay, that's fine too. There's some great stuff out there.
Yeah, I agree that we should always be looking at increasing the options for developers, but the numbers for the items that were requested were set on in exchange for other concessions that the city was giving them in terms of how many units or how much open space they had to have. So I don't want to see reducing the number of requirements without reducing the benefit to the developer, what the trade-off with the developer, because that's just,
Yeah, and Jay allows you to say, hey, this is another element that we want to include that's not on this specific list, and it just adds more, it just adds more features, I guess, overall to whatever the site is trying to do. I mean, when you look at a recreation site, kids like to skateboard or whatever, that's not on here, or, I'm just saying, it's kind of, like you're saying, it's kind of infinite as to potentially what's going on a particular development, but why, it allows people a lot of flexibility.
It
as
gives
far
you
as
the
I'm
intent here,
Right.
and then the
yeah.
question is, how many are we going to require? So the question was brought up.
I like 4.
and it was also in response to, we were looking at places back then where developers had built, like courtyards in the middle of a building, and there's nothing there but pavers, and there's there's not a tree, there's not a fountain, there's just 4 blank walls, a door, and the paving that was there. And, I mean, that's not even a space, that's like a prison yard walk,
Put a couple picnic tables in there, and
Yeah,
you're good.
that was it. So at least let's require them to put something in there so that, I'm just talking about the intent, so.
I am still seeing mixed responses, so
Yeah, I was waiting for a rebuttal for leaning towards 3.
I vote for, my vote would be for 3, and it's just because the costs are so unbelievably high for a lot of these things, especially when you're going to a commercial level. Additional graffiti and vandalism has been such a significant issue, whether it be porta potties out there at Janicki playing fields or somewhere else. It's a lot of maintenance, honestly. So that's why I lean more towards the 3, but I support whatever the commission decides.
Looking at this list and based on cost, I'm kind of torn, right? Because another element that meets the intent, that would be under your guys' discretion, right? Does this meet the intent? The majority of these items are expensive. Covered picnic shelter and picnic structure, not so much. But drinking fountain or water bottle refill station, you have to have a water meter for that. So that's something to keep in mind. You have to have some sort of water to serve that. That's not a resident with a residential water meter. Sports court, sports field, and children's play equipment are significantly expensive. Community garden, I love the idea of that. Will it be maintained by the HOA? Another one of those things where I'm just not sure. Could it just be a bunch of empty boxes full of weeds in the long run? So if we're gonna do 4 different elements, maybe getting creative with suggestions that the just as kind of like a pre-approval of like, yes, the city is okay with going ahead with this, like this meets the intent, instead of, I love the idea of keeping another element in there, but just kind of giving more to pick and choose from that's cost conscious.
Would it make sense to assign a certain value depending on the cost of the improvement? For example, a water feature, like a fountain, you have the water meter, you have the sewer connection, you have the fountain itself. Would it make sense to give that a value of 2 and keep it at 4? And that way you keep the covered shelter at 1, those easy to maintain, easy to build things at a value of 1.
Yeah, but you can have something that meets an intent, okay, that practically costs nothing. So it's just the intent we're talking about. That's why J is the coverall. So there's things that are not expensive, and I agree, yeah, on a drinking fountain and things like that. These are, I want to call suggestions, but J is the coverall, okay? As Commissioner Fournette said, it's kind of infinite. There's a lot of things that you can do that meet the intent that don't have this massive cost attached to it, that serves whatever the public good we're trying to accommodate in a recreation area. It doesn't need to be expensive, and that's where J allows you a whole lot of flexibility.
Yeah, if a water feature could be a bird bath, then I guess we're okay with
Right,
4.
yeah. No, but that's the point, though, right? I can think of a lot of things that J would cover that meets the intent, and that's why J is the coverall. So I'm not looking at massive costs on a lot of these things. You know, J is allowing people a whole lot of flexibility, and then you would be the authority to decide if it meets that intent.
I do agree with that. I think my one concern is, right now, we have an amazing planning department at the city of Sedro-Woolley. Over time, as staff changes, which in other cities and jurisdictions, this has been experienced, it can be less collaborative with a developer when trying to determine. So I love the flexibility of it, but it is nice to have maybe some more options that are cost conscious that could be chosen from in the event that that collaboration and that relationship with city staff and the developer aren't the same as what they currently are.
So perhaps the solution would be adding more items to the list, but keeping the requirement at 4, particularly looking at items that would be cost-effective, easy to maintain, and vandalism resistant.
Yeah.
If you can meet them all three, I know it's a hard task.
Well, two things I can think of. I mean, like, I take your point that if you get different planners, they may just say, nope, that's what the rule says. You got to do the thing. But I agree that you guys have the final say on what goes and what doesn't go. So, if somebody's done 3 things really, really well and spent quite a bit of money on it, then maybe 3 is enough. But that's at your discretion. You can do that, right? You don't have to have 4 just because it says 4. And then the other thing I was going to say was the other possibility is just capping the expense at some percentage of the cost of the project, and saying, you have to do 4 of whatever's on the list, or make up the thing that you want to do, but you don't have to exceed more than this percentage of the cost of the project to do it. And I only suggest that versus a dollar amount is because you don't have to keep updating the number that way. It's a percentage of the thing. So anyway, that's 2 ways I can see around it. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into the section of code that we have on departures from the design standards. So the required elements in the design standards and guidelines are typically required unless a departure from those standards is specifically requested to us. And we can approve a departure through a couple different ways. The code says if the applicant incorporates encouraged design elements that we have in here are subject to recommendations. If they incorporate other significant design elements which accomplish the same purpose, so opening up that flexibility kind of to what you're pointing at. And then if they are within the CBD, participate in the building facade easement program with the mural. Those would be the options. So yes, staff does have more flexibility than we normally would with like the bulk restrictions in the zoning code, for example.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of something like, you could do 4 different things, but maybe all you do is put in like a living wall, which isn't that expensive, it's some odd fencing and some pots or terracotta or something, and that stuff growing out of it, and you haven't spent that much at all, and it's all the space you need. And sometimes 4 things would be good. Depends on how it's designed, right? One thing can make it really good. In the next place, they might need to do 6 of the things.
Okay. So, kind of tying it all the way back to Matt's question, it sounds like the majority of the commission is in favor of 4. I would like to add some more elements to this list, and still recognizing through the departure process that staff have flexibility, but adding more to the list to make sure that there are still some guaranteed options that are feasible.
Some low-dollar items? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
But they exist. I mean, if I was just to Google recreation area and just start looking at different things, I'll come up with a whole bunch of really nice, cool things that kids like and adults like or whatever that are hardly really, doesn't really cost that much.
Is this part of the in lieu of thing you were talking about for 15,000, like going into the Parks Department?
Oh,
The fee in lieu is for the recreational space itself. So if you're if you're proposing a subdivision of 15 lots or less, you can, instead of providing 8,000 square feet of residential recreation area, I'm not gonna do that, I'm not gonna design it into my plans, I'm gonna give the city 15,000.
Okay, that has nothing to do with these elements here. In other words, what I'm trying to ask is if they write you a check for 15 grand, can they forget all this?
Yes,
Okay, so that's a way out.
yes.
so let me share this on a cost basis for a recreation area. So Olympic Park is right out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I go down there quite a bit because a friend of mine lives there and I have some property in Tennessee. So what they have along this trail is just easy workout stuff. Pull-up bars, dip bars, just the typical stuff you would see in a kid's playground all throughout the trail. So that's like really easy stuff that hardly costs anything that you can easily add into a recreation area. I'm just saying, yeah, we can expand the list, but those are great elements to have. The trail would be one itself, right? Then all of a sudden you have a pull-up bar, number 2. Throw a little bit of artwork, and I'm already at 3. 4 is a low bar, is all I'm saying. And there are options that are not expensive that absolutely increase the value of a recreation area as a whole. What's recreation to you versus recreation to me?
So I will add more elements to this list.
Thank you.
I'm in favor of that.
Commissioner DeVoyne, do you have any more questions?
Yes. Page 176. I assume this is referring to the area to the west of Hodgson Street, where they're building and cut all the trees down. They want pad, park, seating area, plaza, green, open mall, sports court. There is not enough space over there, and they're building janky, building a hotel there. So I don't see how you can put room for all that. That's my observation.
You're talking about requirement 1 on page 176?
17.21.05001. So a percentage of my area must be open to open space, and it lists all of the community property items in that space, and I just don't think there's room over there in the area for all that space and for the living quarters.
So I just want to clarify that not everything in this list is a requirement. These are just examples of how.
One or more. Okay, I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries.
I'm a lot to read. Okay. On page 178, I think that there needs group A, B, and C. There has to be 2 elements from each of the following groups. But in the residential area, they had to have 1 of each group. So I was just surprised that in this housing section, they need 2 elements per group.
So this requirement here is for buildings within the urban village mixed-use overlay
Urban
zone?
village, yes.
Yeah, so all of these requirements in here, everything has been copied and pasted. We just changed the formatting, so that is a requirement that we currently have for the urban village.
Okay.
Before we start making changes to the urban village, staff would need to go through that and come up with recommendations. So if
Okay.
that is something, I think that that's kind of a broader question for the planning commission, is whether on our second revision for the next meeting, we want to also include the urban village mixed-use overlay chapter and making that more objective.
Just what you want to do is when you look at this, actually go over to those projects and see exactly how all this is incorporated into it, because those projects look pretty awesome to me. All the intent when we did UVMU, again, and I've mentioned this before, did you create something that is the Bride of Frankenstein? Or did you create something that actually you delivered something, and our developers delivered something that actually fit a lot of discussion and a lot of code, and those projects look great. And when I look through this list, just the easy stuff, right? A canopy and a porch, right? Clear glass and large entry doors. All these are right in the same component, right? So take a look at what we put in and what we actually got out of it. I think you're going to be pretty impressed, because I am. They've done a great job.
This table is referenced again on page 142, I think, in the just general building design standard for any new building, right? I have a comment on the Group C options. Stone masonry can be expensive. It is also, you have to kind of think of architectural style. So, for example, Bucko Estates is more of like a modern farmhouse style development. So stone and masonry on the exterior of those homes is not preferred. And then from a developer standpoint, pots or planters is a really hard one, because we're not just gonna take a pot and put it on the front porch and get our certificate of occupancy, you know? It's like, it's removable, and if we do it like a permanent, like raised planter, like not just the regular landscaping that you would do, I work a lot with pre-sale clients, people that buy the houses before they're finished, and I have talked to a few of them about this, and they said, I don't want another thing to maintain. I want to be able to change what I want to change in terms of the landscaping in front of their house. Also, seating is a hard one, because I don't think anyone wants a bench affixed to their front porch before they buy the house. Like, that might be a preference on their end of like, oh, what kind of front porch seating would I like? So maybe adding some more options or some different options into Group C that still meet the intent, but that can be achieved with something more permanent. And there was another comment in here, I think, down number 4, ground floor street-facing facades, commercial mixed-use buildings. A lot of the commercial area that is required for like at Trailhead Apartments, like those commercial spaces aren't filled until, normally those commercial spaces stay vacant longer than a freestanding building. And so like meeting that hanging basket requirement, nobody's gonna put a hanging basket up in front of an empty commercial storefront because there's no one there to take care of it. I feel like no hanging basket looks better than a dead hanging basket after you get certificate of occupancy. Just something to think. I think pots and planters, like, they look great when they're beautifully, same with the community garden, right? It looks great when they're beautifully maintained, but that's an easy thing that doesn't get maintained. And then it's not something that's enforceable, so we don't ever actually meet the intent of that design standard. I mean, I don't think you guys can go, can you guys enforce that? Can you go say your hanging basket's dead and that's part of your design standard?
After what,
I don't-
hours every day on my balcony.
I don't even want to comment.
Very, very good at it.
You would be surprised what I've been asked to enforce. Let me just put it that
No,
way.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
So we are approaching 8 o'clock, and I still have 3 more sections of this code to get to. So
Okay, it's 8 o'clock, let's move on to the next section.
You know, this is all good conversation, though, because this is really important stuff that are the requirements that actually impact the livability of why we do what we do. So I realize we're moving on a little bit here, but this is really valid stuff to talk about. And if it takes a little bit longer, well, so be it. But
Yeah, and Commissioner DeVoynes will probably be talking about this again if you have more questions, so.
They're trivial. Gable placed in a tree. I looked up Gable for definitions. I couldn't find it. I don't know what Gable is. So
The definition of gable?
yeah.
I can picture it in my mind. It's hard to describe, though. I can definitely add that definition to Chapter 10, definitions.
I would.
I also want to mention that the mayor has specifically requested to expedite this code amendment. Yeah.
Okay, so it won't be talked about again then?
We will have one more meeting, but
Okay.
staff's goal is to have only one more meeting at Planning Commission and then send it to City Council.
Got it.
For
Okay.
all of these code amendments. I mean, this is like 187 pages of them.
The design, or the signs, murals, design standards
So-
portion of it.
Okay, that's fine. Be more specific. Thank you.
Okay, moving along.
Okay, moving on to signs. There really haven't been too many changes to the bulk restrictions that we have for signs. They're the size limitations. Really, what we've done for this section of the code is clarify and take out any subjectiveness that we could find. We added a new type of sign. Previously, we didn't have any code for billboards in our municipal code. They were just treated as any old sign. So we've added specific requirements for billboards and set a threshold of 100 square feet for when that is triggered. That may need to, we can talk about that threshold for billboards, but 100 square feet looked like a pretty average billboard size when I was doing my research. We've also changed the codes for murals. So if you look back at 17.42.155, a lot of changes are proposed here. Section A and Section B, the history and the purpose, is tying it back to that old mural code, still having this history and purpose section as an intent for what the city is looking for, why we're changing it now. And then the requirements begin in sections C and D. We will require a mural permit, particularly to make sure that murals are applied in a way that protects the old brick that we have downtown. We got a lot of helpful feedback from the city of Richmond, Virginia, which is a city that's more than 150 years older than us. And so they have a lot of older brick structures there, a lot of issues with spalling and deterioration. And they gave us a lot of helpful feedback. And that's been used in both the mural code and the exterior paint code, which I'll kind of tie into here. We are looking for, when somebody is proposing a mural on older brick installed before 1950, we're going to require some sort of breathability be demonstrated for that brick. That can be demonstrated a number of ways. It can be through a specific paint type that they use. It can also be by tiling a mural and installing joints into the brick mortar to support those tiles. Just making sure that the brick has some way to breathe, especially if it's older brick, because if bricks can't breathe, then they trap in moisture, and then that's when you get the spalling, falling apart, everything's kind of crumbling.
That's what I was on.
I'll kind of tie this into the exterior paint code here. A lot of the requirements in there is about preserving brick. There's also requirements in there about removing loose paint chips, preventing overspray, making sure that there's no visible streaks or patches or spots or brush strokes in exterior paint, and also prohibiting a certain palette of colors from the central business district. We are not going as far as Leavenworth and prescribing colors, but yes, we are proposing that primary neon hues, blended neon hues, fluorescent hues, luminous hues, iridescent hues, reflective colors, and their electric variants are prohibited from paint color in the central business district. I have a feeling that this will be the next group, city council, looking at this after you guys is going to be looking at this section of code in particular.
Who suggested those colors be? I'm just curious, who suggested they be?
This section of code was largely crafted at the suggestion of the mayor.
Oh, okay.
Ashton, as we move forward, you're skipping around, so I'm having a real problem finding what page you're on and what I need to be looking at. I finally have it in front of me. So before you skip to the next section, just tell me where to look, because we've got a whole lot of things.
So
This
right
agenda.
now, we're talking about signs and exterior paint, so that's going to be sections 17.42.
And we're in draft amendments 8/18/26. That's the document, correct?
Yes, so I unfortunately don't have page numbers, but in that document, it's section 17.42.
I'm there, I just needed to know which one out of the several docs that we have here, that's all.
Oh, it's the last one on the.
It's the last one. I didn't know you were on the last one.
And it's page 31.
Yeah, actually 32, where we have
32,
the
yeah.
primary neon hues, blended neon
Right.
hues, fluorescent hues. I didn't know there were so many hues.
And that's what we're encouraging?
No, that's what we're disavowing.
What's an electric variant?
Uh,
Help me here, man.
So when I was researching this, like electric blue, electric pink
Okay,
are specific types of colors
okay.
that are not desired in the central business
Okay.
district.
It's so close to neon.
Okay,
It's basically neon.
okay, thank you. That I get.
None of this applies to any of the zones except the central business
Okay.
district.
Are you open for questions?
I am.
Ashton, real quick. Is this a document that you would like put on the screen and stream? Or is this something that was physically handed out to the commission?
If you could upload it on the screen, it was submitted as a late item, so it's not included in the primary packet. But if you're on Civic Clerk, with all of the agenda items on the left-hand column, it's the very last item titled Draft Amendments 8/18/26.
Ah, I see. Okay.
The
Thank
big
you.
screen is helpful, by the way. Very much.
And when you get to that, we are on section 17.42.230.
Oh, give me 1 second before you start throwing it. Is that me?
No worries, I can repeat that.
17, what?
17.42.230.
It's page 31.
Okay, thank you.
So Ashton,
Yes.
murals, are they just central business district or all through the city?
For murals, let me confirm. We will allow murals all throughout the city.
And my next question is, if somebody has a 100 or 200-foot long, 6-foot high fence, and they paint walruses on each panel, is that a mural?
I know what you're talking about, and that is in the county.
Where is it?
And why would anyone do that? But anyway, beside the point, would that be a,
I think they're Sasquatches.
whatever, okay, there's that too, but
I don't know which is funnier.
is that an infringement on what you're trying to achieve here?
No, we are not trying to infringe on content, especially in residential zones.
Okay, so Sasquatches and walruses are fine on murals, without a permit, right?
I have to confirm, but I'm pretty sure we're requiring mural permits only for the central business district.
Okay. I'll just have to grin and bear it. That brought me to the disturb the peace and quiet part on D1 of murals.
With the case law that's come out, disturbing the peace and quiet is pretty limited in scope. It's pretty much almost a direct verbal attack on a protected group.
Oh, that's what that means. I thought it meant if I have to walk down the road like this, it was
So you're
disturbing my peace.
disturbed.
No, it can also include some profanities and some obscenities. It really is a case-by-case basis.
Okay, so just because it's ugly doesn't mean it's disturbing the peace.
Correct.
Okay. And then I had one other comment on, we have to move up a ways here, 17.42.075, which is probably up around 18 or 20.
Can you repeat that?
17.42.075. Yeah, departures. Just one small comment. Instead of departures, oh, I'll wait till you're there.
I'm there.
Instead of departures to the requirement, wouldn't it be departures from, or am I reading it wrong?
I think you're correct.
Okay. And that's all I have in comments. Anybody else?
I was joking when I said I had that in my packet. I will get you comments by the end of the week.
No worries. We kind of covered exterior paint and signs and murals all together as one. Any final comments before I move on to the final piece, which is the easement program?
Speak now, or?
And where do I find that? On the same document?
Same document. It begins after the exterior paint code.
Okay.
17.42.310 is
Okay.
the beginning.
So it'd be like 32-ish.
310 it is.
Intent?
So
32.
we recognize that the design standards, especially for some of the lots, some central business district lots in particular, can be hard to accommodate. We've experienced this with developers in the past and have, as we are allowed with the Growth Management Act, we've allowed departures from our design standards and guidelines, provided that there is some other element that has been met. And so this is essentially codifying that process into our code. And one of the ways that we will allow a departure from our code is by dedicating a mural to the city. And so the intent of that is to make sure that a mural is well done, it is installed properly, it is vandalism resistant, and that it will be there for at least 5 years. And so we are still working out the costs and doing research and seeing what we want the property owner to take care of and what the city is willing to take on. And a lot of this is coordinating with other departments as well as the executive branch. But what we have come up with as of right now is we would allow this program in the central business district, the mixed commercial zone, the TMCO overlay zone, or the UVMU overlay zone, pretty much our mixed use zones. The structure also has to contain a significant facade, a significant blank facade that is visible from the public right-of-way. And as of right now, we are considering the property owner would be responsible for the mural installation, recording the easement agreement, insurance that is required in this section, and any other associated fees. We will waive the mural permit fee, but still require a permit to ensure that these standards are met. And then the city would be responsible for the cost of maintenance and upkeep, including removal of vandalism or graffiti for that duration of the easement.
What criteria is in place or not for what type of mural belongs in Sedro-Woolley? I mean, everybody has a different idea what art and in general is. I mean, your idea of art and Madison's idea of art and his idea of art might be very different than my idea of art. That isn't offensive, but it's just different.
Exactly. And all of that is protected by the First Amendment, the Supreme Court has said. And the city
Very much so,
cannot
yeah.
dictate any sort of content whatsoever. We cannot say what goes on the mural at all, other than size, color, where it is, those things we
Yeah,
can
as we've had
regulate.
this discussion, that's the first thing that hit me in the head is the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Right, yeah.
If you want to see how crazy it can get, look at pictures of downtown Reykjavik in Iceland.
Okay,
They have murals everywhere, and there's no coherence to what the murals are. I mean, it's a great city. I love it, and there's a surprise around every corner. But there's basically, I guess if you own the building, you can put up what you want.
I've seen graffiti that would qualify as a mural that is absolutely flat out amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and some that's, yeah.
And so the key difference there
Without
would
a
be the
permit.
consent of the property owner. Whether the property owner wants it there or not.
I thought it was pretty well spelled out in here somewhere what a mural could be and not be. I just can't find it now.
Yes, that would be in 17.42.155. So those first sections, A and B, kind of tying back to our previous mural code that does regulate content, tying it back to what the city would like, what the purpose of the code is, but again, not infringing on the First Amendment.
I don't know if they had a mural code before they did the murals on the street. Most of the stuff that's out there on the streets now is all Darius Kinsey photos, and people got this one guy to put the Darius Kinsey slides on their wall as a mural, and they didn't hold up real well, but that was like, it was connected to the history of the city. And I'm not saying that it should be limited just to that, but that's what they were doing at that time.
Yeah, that's a good point. The previous mural code, which is included in here, chapter 17.51, all strike through and marked repealed, requires that a mural be a Darius Kinsey photo, which is very content restrictive.
And it looks like you have to have an application for the mural. You guys have to approve it. You need a diagram or a photo, and you have to know who the artist is. You want to see other things they've done, so on and so forth, right?
Yes, I have to double check that this is in the code, but our intent is to only require a mural permit if it's within the downtown, and if the property owner is electing to do the voluntary easement program, then we would waive that $25 permit fee. But permits outside of the central business district, we are not overly concerned with the condition of brick outside of the central business district.
No one's going to care about $25.
You'd be surprised. When I tell somebody they need a $25 paint permit to paint their downtown business, people get upset.
It's the principle. Anyway, we were in intent. Is that where we were?
This section of code is relatively short, mostly because we're still working out the details with the other departments. We, in our research, Oregon City, Oregon, has a similar program to this. They required in their code a certificate of general liability insurance in the amount of $1 million. And we have pretty much copied and pasted that code verbatim from the city, Oregon City.
For what?
Yeah, what are they liable for? If it falls off?
If they install the mural poorly and something bad happens, that's something that we can discuss more, but that was a code requirement for Oregon City.
And who's taking that out, the city or the person who's putting up the mural?
The property owner is taking that out and naming the city.
Okay.
And that's on historical buildings?
It would be brick buildings participating in this voluntary easement program. So not all murals, but only murals where the city would be taking over maintenance for a period of 5 years.
I got you.
So you paint the building, you put a mural on a building, you paint it. Now you need $1 million in general liability because you painted the building?
I was trying to figure out if the $1 million was damage to the historic building potentially, or.
And that might be why they chose that number. That number might not be
to re-
applicable
'cause
to Sedro-Woolley.
reconstruct a 200-year-old.
But I'm thinking from the insurance company's perspective, they might not write a policy for something like that. I mean, the building requires
they'll write
the
for anything.
liability, but to say I need a general liability for a mural, State Farm's gonna do this, they're gonna be, what? So I'm not too sure who would even write that.
Lloyd's of London.
So then, in the event that something happens to the mural, that is the city then responsible for that because we are undertaking maintenance for a 5-year period?
No, it's more it's more the fact of the insurance company needs to write a policy on something. So I'm not too sure what companies that are out there would actually write an insurance policy on a mural. So it's not a matter of that you're putting it in the code. Can the individual who is putting the mural up even get the insurance? And who even writes a policy like that?
They'll do it for price. I mean, I asked State Farm about some art that I made one time that I had laying around, and they said, yeah, it's a writer, and it'll cost you this much, and I'm like,
But it's a
okay,
personal
just rebar the
possession.
thing.
But that's personal possession. That's something that's tangible that you can pick up and take and move, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a piece of art. I'm just saying they'll write for art. It'll just be a writer policy, and it'll cost more than.
It might require a little bit more research. I'm not too sure. What he's saying is something you could pick up and transport. Putting a mural up on a wall and ensuring that, I'm not too sure who would write a policy like that. I mean, the building's gonna have to have the insurance anyway. So it could be what Pat's saying, a rider, that it also covers the exterior painting. I'm just saying that it sounds like this is specific to this particular mural. It could just be in general that it's part of the building. I don't know. But if we require separate coverage for that aspect of the building, it might already be covered. I'm just saying that I don't think it's a separate policy. It might be included in it, and it needs to be named. I'm just saying that insurance companies are a little bit weird at times.
I do agree after thinking about it. I think that that's a good thing for us to research because it would be embarrassing. And I'll give you an example. I did partial remodel in my house, and when I had the contractor come in, excuse me, the contracts that I had have some special rider for the workers that were going to be in the house. I went to 3 different companies. No one had ever heard about this type of rider. Went back to the contractor, said, I can't find this insurance policy. He's like, oh, I didn't realize that was in the contract. And literally, I was like, this is your contract. And you didn't know something in it. So I'm just thinking about egg on our face with the city if we're requiring something like that. And if it's not available in the state of Washington, it would be nice to know that before it's written into an ordinance. So I do agree with you.
There's gonna be liability insurance on the building, but if we're saying this is separate, specific to the mural, we might wanna ask those questions. I've never heard of an insurance company writing a $1 million general liability policy for a painting on a building. I'm just saying, let's ask the question.
And why are we encouraging murals on facades anyway? Is that something new? Oh, sorry. Is that something new, these facade murals? Are we encouraging more artwork in the city, or what are we doing?
I can answer why it was set up originally. I mean, we were looking for ways to sell Sedro-Woolley, and we had a revitalization committee at the time through the Chamber of Commerce, and it was their suggestion that we have murals as a way of doing it. So then we had to come up with rules under which it would operate, right? That you do murals, and they felt that at the same time that they put out like the watermelon girls down here at the entrance to town, and the whipsaw guy out there by Janikie's out here at the corner of 20 and 9. And they just said, yeah, let's do old-time pictures of the history of Sedro-Woolley, and that'll tie in with our art Art Nouveau style and blah, 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 and all that. So anyway, that's why they let them in. Now, it's changing completely because it's, because you can't require it to just be historical, so. So I guess you could get into the argument whether we should allow murals at all, or
Well, if it's all or nothing?
All or nothing.
I would say nothing, because who knows what is gonna be there, and nothing we can do about it.
yeah.
But,
I think a decision to do nothing would be quickly remanded back from city
Oh.
council.
okay, well, I want to bring it up to flagpole,
do
because I
nothing
don't
then.
know why we're doing this.
Oh, no, I've never been remanded by the city council. Let's do it and see what happens. I want to see what it's like.
Yeah, let's try it.
You're fired.
I'm only joking, but I wanted to know intelligently why we were discussing this, because, if it's,
Part of it, kind of tying back to 2024 when I was first hired, was taking an inventory of what we currently had in the city, and how we could facilitate more murals. There's been a lot of changes to the commissions here at Sedro-Woolley, and the Arts Commission was established and then it was dissolved, and so I think we are trying to encourage art, particularly art produced on the private side, but still incentivizing that, and so one way would be through, one, making sure our murals are compliant with applicable regulations, our mural code, and then two, carving out a path to facilitate mural creation, i.e. a departure from the design standards.
okay, I can understand that, but if people get upset with garage doors, I could imagine what would happen, a mural that they don't like. So, anyway, just throw that out there. Should be some standards.
Can't regulate content.
Okay, no garage doors, but put what you want painted on the wall. That's just great. Okay, I said my piece. I'm out of here. Anybody else
You're the chair.
before we move on? I relinquish it. Who wants the floor?
It's all
Got it.
yours.
Sorry, I messed up. Go ahead. Do you have more to say about this?
I am done with my code amendments. We've covered everything.
Okay. Any other comments?
And did you say that we don't have the option to see this, again, well, I don't see there is any changes, but, to it, but, the mural part of it. But you said we don't get to talk about it again before,
We'd like to have the public hearing at the next planning commission
Oh, okay.
meeting. So one more read and ideally a motion to recommend approval to city council at the next meeting, the August or the September meeting.
Okay. Any other comments?
I have a request.
You have a request, okay.
If the planning commission so chooses, we would like a motion to hold a public hearing for these code amendments at the September planning commission meeting.
Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, that's easy. I make a motion to, at the next planning commission meeting, to have a public hearing on unfinished business. That would be updates to Title 2, 13, 15, 16.
Nope.
and-
Other item, sorry.
I make a motion to have a public hearing on updates to Title 15 and 17 Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code and Design Standards and Guidelines.
We have a first from Commissioner Fatisi on a public meeting or hearing next month. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jasper seconds that. All in favor of a public meeting next month, say aye.
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 All opposed?
So we're
Unanimous.
still not done with the updates on the first one, okay.
Correct. Sorry about that. Thank
Gotcha.
you.
No, it's all right.
Okay, so public hearing next month. And
In recognizing that there was a late item, I would like to provide the planning commission with a little bit of additional time. So I just want to make it very clear, if you have additional comments or need more time to go through this and review it, We would like your comments by next Monday, the 24th, if that seems reasonable to the Planning Commission.
I will have additional comments on by Monday, the 24th.
Thank you for that. Well, it's 8:30.
Only 43 pages.
If there's any other comments, now's the time. Otherwise, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Bowman has a first on adjournment.
I second.
Commissioner Fatisi seconds. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Adjourn-
Aye.
say Aye. Nay? We're out of here, 8:31. Thank you very much.